Okay, let's hope this works because if not, I'm gonna fight the world. I'm gonna fight. Hold on. All right. Let's see if I can add Lewis from here. Invite. Okay, let me see if that does anything. Yes, won't God do it? I approved it, and it says that you'll receive an answer. Approve. Morefoca. Approve. Bring Luis Emilio on camera. They'll receive an invite to join your broadcast. Add.
Dude, what's going on?
Yo, it's Eshu.
Dude, what's going on? Are you on an Android phone?
No, yo, I'm on a BlackBerry. I'm on an Ericsson. Yo, it's
You
literally like
need to
freezing
let go.
up and then not happening.
You need to let go of the 1992 Motorola Razr that you're using.
You better stop it because I have a Samsung Android that's wonderful. Goddamn it!
How's it going, brother?
All right, it's going good. It's going good. So for those of you who are joining in today, I am honored and happy to speak to my good brother Luis, um, who is an Alosha, who's an Awo, who is an herbalist, who is an amazing individual, who is just, I mean, good character and
Thank
knowledgeable
thank you for all the
and not
for all the accolades.
egotistical. And so we're here today to discuss a few things, and we were talking privately about Isheshe and Lucumi and various aspects of our tradition. And so, just briefly, I'm going to give a quick introduction on myself, and I'm going to let him introduce himself as far as because I believe that we need to introduce our credentials. I always say that because I want people speaking things like, you have no authority to speak about this, because I'm the first one to say it. So I'm an Oloshun. I am initiated to Oshun in the Lukumi tradition. I'll be 8 by this April. And I'm a practicing Epiritita, which has nothing to do with this conversation, but that's who I am. That is what I do. Again, my name is David Sosa, and I'm going to hand it over to Lewis to introduce himself.
Well, good evening, everyone. Happy to be able to join you guys after such a long time. It's been a while. And David and I, as David said before, we talk a lot in private with several other acquaintances, and our topics have to do mainly with the way our traditions are going and all the schisms and paradigm shifts and the way the practice is constantly evolving. So David and I were touching upon a couple of subjects that we think are important. I mean, they're all very important, but these are subjects that I think um, there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of uncertainty and people need to see both sides of the proverbial coin. I should
Right.
I should say. So anyway, having said that, my name is Marin. As David pointed out, I am initiated as an Olosha in the Lucumi tradition. I'm initiated to Eshu, to Elegba, and then in the Isheshe tradition, I'm an Ifa. I'm initiated to logun. I'm initiated to Erinle. I'm initiated to Egbe, uh, Egungun, and some other stuff. Ogboni, some other stuff. And that's pretty much it. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, Boricua, just like my friend David here, my brother David. And yeah, let's get right to it. I think we should preface by telling folks that the topic, the range of topics that we want to speak on tonight have to do with a lot of the clashes, somewhat, if we could call them that, clashes that exist between Lucumi practitioners, and even under that umbrella, I guess you could place Candomblé people, and let's just say people in the diaspora, and people that practice Iese. And I think it's important for those that are watching and listening to understand that a lot of these all these discussions that take place, and the uncertainty and the misinformation is misplaced. There's just not enough good solid information out there, and a lot of hearsay and a lot of animus and acrimony and antagonism that shouldn't really exist, and in some ways it really doesn't. It seems to be I would say the general consensus that people think that we're always clashing with each other, and we don't get along, and it's us between them. So David is an Olosha, and even though I'm an Olosha, I have dedicated myself to Iese practice, and I think it's high time that we came together and dispel a lot of the myths, dispel a lot of the misconceptions and the misinformation that people might have.
Absolutely. I mean, and getting right into it, I think one of the things that is a very popular thing, unfortunately, is a lot of people will travel to Cuba or travel to Nigeria. They will get initiated. They will form an opinion based on a short amount of time amongst the people. And then they would bring back this idea as if throughout all of Cuba or throughout all of Yoruba land, that there is this codified, uniformed way of practicing. And they come back and they speak with such authority about how things are in Nigeria, how things are in Cuba, and it's across the board. So it doesn't matter where you are. People do it. They go to Brazil. They do the same thing.
Right.
And so I think one of the myths that I think should be dispelled and or spoken about is the fact that there are variances and differences within Iese and within Lucumi, as we know as practitioners in Lucumi, depending on lineages
Absolutely.
and regions and things of that nature. And so that plays a huge part in how we approach certain Orisha, or how we may even approach the process of Omiero, or just things of that nature, and or things done Ebo wise, or pre-Ocha or pre-seeding of Orisha. And I say that because as much as the My House phenomena has become a big thing to divide and split up, and a lot of misinformation in that as well, a lot of hiccups that have become custom and therefore have become tradition, there really is a history of various people, Egbado, who did things differently than perhaps some of the more Oyo-centric people. You had some of the Yesa or Ijesha people who also had variants in ways that they approached Egun and or even Osain, Ogun and Ochun, and things of that nature. So what would you say to that as far as in your travels? Because I know you've traveled to various parts as well of Yoruba land, as well as just the place that you were also initiated in, correct?
Yes.
So what are things you can speak to on that as far as, noticeable differences?
So you hit the nail on the head, and like I said, it is across the board. It's not a phenomenon that exists solely in the diaspora or in Nigeria. So let's talk about Nigeria. There really is no hegemony when it comes to Orisha practice in Nigeria. There is no. There is a famous author that wrote. Her name is what's her name? Barber. She wrote on how difficult it is to chronicle and to piece together Orisha practice, if we're going to put it under one umbrella, Orisha practices in Nigeria, just because it's constantly evolving. And it's not just a regional thing. It actually, interesting enough, Karen Barber is her name. Even within let's look at it let's look at a microcosmos of the religion. Let's take, for example, a compound. You can be in one compound in one city, one compound. So you have this microcosmos of practitioners all live together. They're usually all family members, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, the head of the compound, etc. And you can ask them the same question as it relates to, let's just say, one particular Orisha, and more often than not, they will all give you a completely different answer. They will all give you, I mean, be it theogony, you know, the origin story of a certain Orisha, or the cosmogony, or the whatever, what have you, that has to do with the Orisha. And they will all give you a different version of that story. And Karen Barber wrote in her book how difficult it is to piece all this together, because there's no coherence. It's like very I don't know how to put it. I don't know what term to use. But what I will say is that in a strange way, it's all correct. It's not incorrect. It's not incorrect information. I mean, there is some misinformation, and a lot of times it has to do more with the youth who are not very well informed. Some of them are. I'm not grouping them all in the same under the same umbrella, but it just is that way, and that's just in a particular component, in a small controlled environment. Now you start spreading out throughout Yoruba land, where Isheshe is practiced in southwestern Nigeria, and the changes, the gaps become wider and wider and wider. A lot of it is not spoken out in the open. You know, there's always this unwritten rule that, you know, you never question other lineages, but there's a lot of you know, behind closed doors, talking about, oh, well, they do it that way and we do it this way. That's kind of wrong. This is kind of right. And it has to do with it encompasses a whole bunch of different aspects of the tradition itself. And I know that we're going to cover some of those, including the role of women in traditional Isheshe, you know, and how they're seen and what their roles are. Excuse me. But yeah, there really is no hegemony. It's kind of I don't know. Every place has their own way of doing things, and you can go next door and it's completely different, and they can back it up. They have, you know, their essay fa to back it up why it is so. They have the other people have their essay fa why it is not so. So you really, there's also no there's no room to contest anything or to debate why it is the way it is. It just is. So I think it's very important for people to understand that there really is it's disingenuous to proclaim that Isheshe practice is like this, unless you cover the entire gamut, which would take you, I don't know, forever, because there's so many different subgroups within the Yoruba, and they all practice Isheshe, you know, in their own way.
Right. Kyle says family versus cultural, I mean, family and cultural traditions versus religion. As far as an approach, have you seen, or do you agree with that assessment?
So that's kind of a tricky question, because that's seen through a Western prism. If you can't separate. So the word religion is problematic. So let's actually remove the word religion from Isheshe practice, and let's just say that family and culture and whatever we want to call the spiritual the spiritual culture, whatever you want to call it, it's all ingrained. It all forms part of the tradition. You know, you need to understand that the Yoruba language, the language that is spoken by all the Yoruba people, is rooted in Isheshe practice. It's not the other way around. So everything that is said in Yoruba alludes to some sort of metaphysical point or existence or notion or nuance, and it's that is precisely the reason why sometimes it's so difficult, if not utterly impossible, to translate something in Yoruba, especially when it comes to the spiritual tradition, because the nuances and the concepts are concepts that don't exist in the West. There are no equivalents. So in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there is no separation between the family, the culture, and the religion. They all comprise the Yoruba identity, and they're inseparable. They're actually interwoven amongst each other.
That makes sense to me. I mean, you see similarities within Lucumi, you know, and how people approach, you know, certain houses will, like I said, will approach certain things, and not just based on, for instance, I partook of an erinle, a ceremony where they prepared omiero a very particular kind of way that not everybody does. As far as people that were there, they're like, oh, I never did it like this before. You know, they work from different houses, and Oyadina, Jose Manuel, he had Ibae, he had been present for it, and in one of his moments of just aha moments, he looked at one of my mentors and he was like, "You're from this lineage, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I haven't seen them do omiero like this in a very long time." I mean, he's like, and you know, he graciously sang Osain for that, which was great. And he, you know, he was so happy that that had got preserved and that he was able to trace that like back to a particular lineage. And so it just goes to show that there really are, you know, these practices that have formed and that are based somewhere and that are different. Not everybody's the same. Not every Lucumi house that gets together and works an Ocha ceremony together is going to see the same thing exactly. There are going to be some staple tenets. There are going to be some things that are ritually followed as far as seating is concerned. But other than that, there may be variance in approaches. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that's what makes it so beautiful and so fascinating, that you have these particularities, you have these idiosyncrasies. They're akin to every single lineage, and they you know, they form a different color in the entire palette of what is Lucumi practice, or Orisha practice, Isheshe practice in general. You know, here we're encompassing everything because it's the same, and you see the same thing in Nigeria. You might see somebody that does something that is of a particular region in Nigeria, and it's a beautiful thing to observe, because it's even more beautiful to see the people that are there that are locals. It's beautiful to see them like be in awe of seeing, experiencing, and taking part of something that they have never seen before. That is part of their culture. It's just in a different region. It's somewhere else.
I mean, that's you know, that's the beauty of it, right?
Absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
it's forming a level. I mean, and honestly, the real the realty of it all is that the only thing that's going to stop you from getting along with other people from various traditions or anything is going to be ego.
Right.
It's going to be ego, and it's going to be inferiority complex. It's going to feel that you are somehow less than, or there's something. Yeah, like you have this insecurity about what you practice and feeling that it has to be this one particular kind of way, or that it's better than another system. And it's nonsense at the end of the day. Because if you paid attention to the nuances, whether you agree with them or whether they make sense to you, it just needs to make sense, and it needs to work for the people that it needs to work for. The
Absolutely.
proof has to be in the pudding. And that's
Thank
always
you.
I've always said it.
And
Proof will always have to be in the pudding.
You hit the nail on the head. I think it's imperative that people, instead of getting together to fight amongst themselves about who's right, who's wrong, who's the origin, who's the keeper of the flame, who does it better, who does it worse, who can, who cannot, people tend to forget why it is that we do what we do. why it is that we come together, and usually, if not always, at least that is the underlying mission that we have. We come together to aid somebody or to uplift somebody by the guise of Orisha and the guise of Ashe in whatever of its manifestations. And we are there as vessels and as participants, to uplift somebody else in our community. And that, unfortunately, has been placed on the very back end. And people are more invested now in, like I said before, trying to figure out who's right, who's wrong, which lineage has the most purity. Are they doing the stuff in Africa correct? Are we doing it incorrect? Can we take this? Why are you doing that? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's become this jostling for liturgical supremacy. And it's nonsense. I think it's nonsense. It serves, like you said, it's all ego. It serves no purpose. You're not going to gain anything from it. And it's not only is it irrelevant, it's useless, and it's an insurmountable goal, because everybody's going to be different, and there's going to be continuity, and that's just the way Isheshe or Orisha practices is group it all into one thing. Orisha practice has always been, and I believe always will be. And that's one of the many reasons why I think Orisha religion is constantly evolving. Orisha religion has the singular ability to adapt itself to any kind of environment. I'll say something, and I'll go back to the beginning, as it relates to Lucumi. This is my take on Lucumi. I started as an espiritista in Puerto Rico with my godfather, and I moved on to Lucumi. And everything that I got from Lucumi was beautiful, was incredible. It changed my life. It brought me so many blessings that I can't even begin to enumerate. At some point in my life, I decided my Ori, my destiny told me or guided me to go to Africa, and I felt enamored of what I saw and what I experienced. Even with all the crazy experiences, because people, side note, disclaimer, it's we can call it maybe the Mecca, but there's a lot of stuff that people don't know that happens there, and we'll maybe touch upon that later on in the life. But I moved on to Isheshe practice, and to me, Lucumi was pretty much a segue into Isheshe. But I never abandoned Lucumi. I practice 100% Isheshe because my teachers are in Nigeria. I travel to Nigeria. I try to go at least once a year, and I'm still in training, as I will be for the rest of my life. And my calling has been to be in Isheshe, because Isheshe is what called me. It called me home. However, I will never negate the fact that I am still Lucumi, because I am Lucumi. Because 80% of the Orishas that are surrounding me here in this room are my Lucumi Orisha. I never got rid of my Lucumi Orisha. That would be, sanctimonious. I would never. It's like casting out an old friend because you met a new one. I mean, these Lucumi Orishas are the ones that brought me to Africa. Truth be told, so they work for me just fine. I know who consecrated them. I know how they were consecrated, and I know how much Ashe resides in these different vessels. So for me personally, it was a question of some growth that I wanted to do on a personal level. And I'm not saying that Lucumi, there's no growth in Lucumi. That it's my personal experience. I found something that was near and dear to my heart and to my Ori, and I allowed it to flow. And I'm very proud and very happy with what I'm doing. But I have to tell you, I recognize, and I will always be a champion for the power, the beauty, and the Ashe that Lucumi religion has. And for that matter, Candomblé, all the diaspora traditions. Because, keep in mind, if they didn't work, you wouldn't have millions of people practicing them. I mean, it makes no sense. If Lucumi and Candomblé and Shango Baptist and Kele and whatever we have here in the diaspora didn't work, it wouldn't be as famous and as spread out through the entire globe as it is. I mean, there's Lucumi practitioners probably in almost every continent except Antarctica. Like literally, like I know people in Russia, in Australia, in India. You know, they're everywhere.
Yes, come on, Indian. Yes.
So you know, it's ridiculous to say, well, you know, the Lucumi don't know what they're doing, and it's all very limited, and this and that. There are certain limitations. They're more technical than anything, but it's because of what didn't arrive. But if you go by what happens in Nigeria, there are also technical limitations there because there are certain Orisha that are worshipped in one region, and a lot of them don't even know about other Orisha in other regions because they're far away. They never heard of them. I've spoken to people about Orisha in Nigeria, and they're like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Well, that's kind of like the main Orisha in this town." It's like, "Well, okay, I've never heard of it." So you can actually put them side by side, and it's pretty much the same situation. But you know, not to be redundant or anything, I am a firm believer of the power of the diasporic traditions, because I think it is the diasporic traditions that have put Orisha religion on the world map. It's not the other way around. And I think there should be more respect and more consideration towards you know, people who practice Orisha religion in the West, because because of what I just said. It's the real religions. I know the source. I've been to the source, and I know I felt the same thing there that I felt in Cuba, that I felt in Puerto Rico, that I felt in Brazil, that I felt in different places. Same energy, just a different manifestation.
I totally agree with that. And you know, I think the important thing is to understand that and I can speak for this in the diaspora as far as within Lucumi, you know, a lot of people cling to the word tradition. And they empower the word tradition very, very strongly. And the thing with that is that we have to understand and or at least acknowledge that traditions were founded very much so in the system of Lucumi based on what was happening to people at the time that traditions were being developed, that customs were being developed, and you know there were certain things that were done. For instance, you know, playing tambores after sundown, it became a big taboo. But there was actual you know, limits and curfews in Cuba that didn't allow them to play past a certain time. So it became a custom. It became something that became part of a tradition, and part of the system was put into place was put in with this multi-orisha seating, right? And giving out. And I think, you know, it's one of those things that always bothered me, I can say, you know, within the tradition, because people tend to forget that we adapted and that we made necessary innovative changes, so to speak, to keep things going in a particular kind of way.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, whether there's politics involved in that and as to what the popular way was and is and what it wound up being, that's a whole nother conversation. But you know, it's one of those things because Frank asked a question here. He was like, "So are we acknowledging that these are malleable, changing systems, Lucumi in particular, and therefore the term tradition is stagnant used term more than a term that means ever changing?" And I think it's a kind of a trick question because I believe that every priesthood everywhere in the world, from any ancient rooted tradition and or spiritual practice, has always had to know what the history is behind something, what's important to the culture and identity of the people that it serves, but also decide whether or not, as a community, what's still applicable, what still needs to be, maybe things need to be challenged. Maybe women were looked at a certain way at one point in time, and now they're not looked at that anymore. Or maybe certain ideas may have come into play due to interaction with other cultures and other traditions, religions, or whatever the case may be, which is a huge factor, whether that be Catholicism, Islam, whatever. And you know, we as priests, as a community, are going to have to say eventually, okay, where does this fit in the system? Where does this fall as a practitioner? And it's not going to be as cut and dry as, well, this is just the way I taught and that's the way it is.
Right.
You know, for some people that will be it.
It can be
for other
static.
people it won't.
Like the person commented, these are not static traditions. They might remain static for a certain amount of time, but they're actually very, very dynamic. These are traditions that have gone through a lot of changes. And again, you hit another great point, and that is that Orisa religion adapts itself to the conditions on the ground, okay? And you have to keep in mind that the socio-economic, religio-political conditions of the West are usually completely different than the same conditions in Africa. We have different needs. We come from different backgrounds. Our societal customs are very, very different. You know, even the foodstuffs that we use and that we eat and that we can offer to the Orisha are even liturgical procedures have to be adapted because of cultural values or even cultural sensitivities. And I know that a lot of people that tend to be a little, I don't want to use a, what's the word? I don't want to use a bad term, but I think some, and you have it on both camps, but I think some people in Iese tend to be a little too, let's just say rigid. They tend to be a little too rigid when it comes to the application of Iese in the West. And they need to understand that a lot of stuff that is applicable in Nigeria is irrelevant in the West. And there are things, there are needs that need to be addressed in the West that are not necessarily important in Nigeria, and they're not addressed during divination, they're not addressed during liturgy, what have you. So you need to strike a balance, and you need to know, and I don't think that is that's not bastardizing the religion or molding it to your personal needs, but it is adapting the practice to, you know, the conditions in situ, which you must do. I mean, we culturally, it's next to impossible for us to be giving dogs to Ogun out in the open, because, you know, PETA or what have you is gonna come down on us hard. So there has to be, and also, you know, in Nigeria, it's a common thing that most people observe, and for them it's nothing here. That you have to keep in mind that we shouldn't employ or take part in things that are going to alienate us from other sectors of the community that still doesn't understand, doesn't really have an idea of what we do. Keep in mind that there's still a lot of stigma behind our traditions, and there's a lot of explaining that we always have to do to people. Even yesterday, I had somebody who came here and he said, "Oh, so you're a voodoo priest?" And I said, "No, dude, we're talking about two different things." And excuse me, and it's okay. It's okay, because there is a lot of ignorance, and it is up to us to educate people. You know, that's a great opportunity for you to very calmly, you know, say, "Listen, for the time being, I want you to empty your mind. I want you to remove all the stuff that you see in movies and what you read in books and what you've heard from people saying. And if you want, I invite you to sit down, and I'm going to go over a quick synopsis, you know, a quick cliff notes of what this is and what it really isn't. And then you can formulate an opinion based on the experiences and the knowledge of somebody who's an actual practitioner." And, you know, it's again, that's something that's really important for people to understand, that these traditions have done a fantastic job of adapting themselves to the conditions on the ground and to the needs of the community. I'm still waiting. This is something that I was even thinking about, going over stuff that I wanted to speak with you tonight. And I was thinking, I was taking a shower today, and I was thinking, you know what? I look forward to the day when an Iese Egungun cult, just because we don't have an actual Egungun cult in the West, besides what is practiced in Itaparica Island in Brazil, which is, it's a very, very close community, and you know, you really have very little exposure to it. I look forward to the day when we can have an Egungun cult here, and the Egungun come out, and you're going to have Egunguns for Taino Indians. You're going to have Egungun for the Moors. You're going to have Egungun for the Chinese. You're going to have Egungun for all of our ancestors in the West, our Egungun that don't necessarily, or they absolutely do not have any kind of link to the motherland, but they do have a very strong connection to us. They form part of our Egungun societies, and
Ancestral
they should be
presence,
honored
yeah.
as such. Absolutely.
Well, I think first I want to go back and piggyback off of something because it's something that's bothered me about, and I will say this: I feel it's more so from a Lucumi to Isheshe um, perspective in regards to, like I said, inferiority complexes and things of that nature. There's a notion by a lot of practitioners that feel that once one person has went to receive anything outside of Lucumi, okay, that they went to Nigeria and received something, whatever, that they are somehow turning their back on the tradition of Lucumi and therefore should be viewed differently or are viewed differently, and there's a little stigma. That is all nonsense. That is not generally and or accepted across the board by all Lucumi practitioners, especially my ass and a lot of like-minded people that I align myself with and or affiliate myself with. That it is no one's business what someone else's destiny calls for them to manifest. There should be no reason why somebody who got initiated in Lucumi, who needed to go to Ifa or felt called and compelled and had their own divination that confirmed them needing or wanting to do something and it being okayed, that you have to put your 2 cents in and or make a general consensus that they have to be viewed differently or they somehow betrayed the culture that you feel you are a part of or identify with. That's nonsense. Take that issue, grab a tissue, and keep it to yourself. You do not push that on everybody else. I'm so tired of it. I don't want to hear it. I don't accept it. People need to mind their business. I know for me personally, you will be welcome to work in any room that I was having something done. You still are Lukumi Olosha. You have had the same ceremony I had done. And, we need to start really expanding this notion because it really stems from fear. It stems from fear and ignorance. And I don't understand how in 2018 and in a practice that has survived this long and being spiritual workers and spiritual people that we can allow fear and ignorance to enter the same space as we're entering Odu being cast, which is the exact opposite of all that. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand it, and I just wanted to say that for the record.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I concur with you 1,000%. It's I will say, and I don't intend to be create any kind of polemic or any antagonism, but some of the same people that scream to high heaven because people moved out of the system and went to Nigeria or Togo or wherever the hell they wanted to go because their spirit called them or their destiny or whatever, are the first ones that go to Brazil and get Orisha, or they go to Nigeria and are preparing to get Orisha to bring back. So, there's also a great deal of hypocrisy going on. And that's something that has to be called out and acknowledged. Furthermore, I will say this, and this is again my personal opinion. We are a community that at least tries, albeit not as often as it was before. That's my personal experience, that tries to come together to aid each other, to uplift the entire community. It's always been a community religious practice. But in the end, what we do as priests in this religion is also very individualistic. It's very personal. So there is, in my opinion, there is no place for anyone to pass judgment, tell you what you can do, tell you what you cannot do, tell you where you can go, tell you where you cannot go. Because if you allow that to dictate the paths that you're going to walk, then you're in bondage. You are living somebody else's destiny. And I tell all the people that come through here, I am here to assist you in any way. There is no contract. Excuse me. You can come and go as you please. You don't belong to me. I don't belong to you. There is no, as long as you come here, you respect everything that's in this room, because this was given with a lot of love and a lot of, there was literally blood, sweat, and tears that I had to shed in order to bring all these entities into my life. You need to respect them. You need to respect what they represent, and you need to respect the sacred space. As long as that part of the contract is fulfilled, everything else is gravy. And I tell people, you need to let go of this mentality that you have to do. There's one thing to be said about following the guidance of elders, which is very important. We need our elders. We need our true elders, and that's also another topic that hopefully we will cover, because not everybody that's old is an elder, and not everybody that has many years in this religion is an elder. But we need to follow those that we have entrusted to guide us in these traditions, so that we personally will be able to make better, more informed decisions that will elevate our ori, our consciousness, and ourselves. They can't do that for us. All that they can do, their only role is to function as intermediaries or assistants or mediators, not as, you know, slave masters that say, oh no, this is the way it is in my house and you got to follow my rules, and if you don't, you're cursed and Yemaya's going to kill you or Shango's going to strike you down.
All that nonsense.
That is nonsense. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in very toxic Iles and houses, both here and in Nigeria. This runs the whole gamut. This happens in both sides of the pond, because they fall victim to that fear mongering, to that that whole what's the word I'm looking for? That guilt trip and
because of manipulation. It's simple manipulation.
That's the word I was looking for. Manipulation. They allow themselves to become manipulated, and it's a shame. It's a shame, because I have seen it from elders that people hold in the highest regard. And these people are some of the most heinous people that you can imagine on the planet. And these people are like very well known, you know, very, they enjoy great reputation and everything. And these people are, in the end, people need to forget. I mean, people tend to forget, or people must not forget, that they're all human beings. We're all flawed. We all have issues. And you can't be putting some of these people in a high pedestal when you know that they're going to bring you down. You need to look at their life before you commit to becoming part of that house, that compound, that what have you. And that goes for everywhere. That goes for Brazil, it goes for Cuba, it goes for Puerto Rico, it goes for everywhere in Nigeria. Because unfortunately, you have a lot of con artists, you have a lot of you have a lot of misogynists, you have a lot of thieves, you have a lot of rapists, you have a lot of liars, you have a lot of unscrupulous people. And again, these are people in positions of authority and of power. They run the entire spectrum from the very low to like the very high. And people need to do their due diligence. They got to do their homework, and they got to figure out, ask around, and figure out if that fit is right for them. Because there are too many damaged people in these traditions, and unfortunately, it has been coming to light a lot. This is the proverbial elephant in the room, but this is like a huge elephant that nobody wants to talk about.
People with post-traumatic stress disorder. Like they think about an ocha. I knew someone personally who threw his ochas away. Okay, and when I say threw them away, he didn't throw them in the garbage, but he returned them respectfully where he felt they needed to go. But he had such a traumatizing experience with his supposed godfather, who was relatively trying to pimp him out, and his godbrother, drawing the yaboraje, and or making his own sexual advances. So let me just talk about that. That he felt how can I come to a tambor and act like everything's okay if this man touched my ochas, like he made, you know what I'm saying? Like this was washed for me by this man. This was given to me by this man. And everything about this man makes me feel disgusting, dirty, and whatever, as he had to, because it would triggered him every time he saw this pot. Every time he walked into his house and saw what was there, it triggered him to what he knew he had to leave. And I was probably one of the only Oloshas that were like, boo, do you? I was like, if you got to return their ass to whatever, do you? Why? Because at the end of the day, your happiness and your mental health is very important. And there's no amount of community and no amount of pots of things that are going to, that you got to do what you got to do for you. Okay. And it was sad because so many people flipped the script as far as trying to shame him for doing such a thing. And it's like, but no one dealt with the actual issue of the person who was traumatizing, the person
Of
that
course.
put him through it. Right. It was a, how could you throw out this one and that one? Because
No,
forget that.
and then you have the enablers, and then you have those that want to hide stuff under the rug. They don't want, oh, we don't want the stigma of you calling out this person or this and that. And I think we're kind of digressing a little bit. I think it's a very important topic that we have to absolutely tackle, because unbeknownst to many people, and this is how it relates to the subjects that we're talking. It happens on, like I said, on both sides of the pond. You have the conditions are actually pretty much the same in many places in Nigeria as they are in houses in Puerto Rico, in the United States. I don't know how much of that happens in Cuba. I was never exposed to that. Maybe I wasn't looking for it, or that was almost 30 years ago. So I don't know, but I think it's rampant here in the West, and it's something that definitely has to be spoken on, and it has to be dealt with. It's something that has been swept under the rug for far too long. And having said that, I think that we should talk a little bit about the role of women, at least the role that women play traditionally, how they're seen in Lucumi, and I'll let you speak on that, and I would like to speak a little bit on how they're seen in Nigeria, because there's definitely a lot of misinformation when it comes to that, and I think that's something that touches on what we just spoke on, and should be discussed. So let me ask you. So what is your take on the role of Iyaloshas in Lucumi practice? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the misconceptions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Our whole tradition that we have that was established by women. I
Absolutely.
mean, we would not be able to Moyuba, we would not be able to have any of the ochas that we have right now if it weren't for strong women who had knew of songs and ceremonies and
And we're the
Adura
first one that
affairs. First ones, and I mean, who knew how important it was to bring people together, to birth, to start building community, to start helping establish cabildos. These are women. These are women who were behind everything. And I mean, whether you're citing or do verses of the importance of women or not, I mean, the reality is we don't have any continuity. We don't have anything to continue anything from any. Well, I don't care, from Omo, Ire Omo, whatever. It's always going to be a necessity to include, to consult, to have part of women in the mix. And I actually I'm actually loving the fact that now a lot more women are coming to the forefront to express verbally and unafraid that they want to learn, to work in the capacity as an oriate or as an italera, and be more part of this process that has relatively been taken over by men and has become a major boys club. And like I said, it's an integral part. I don't understand how some of the males, in their misogyny and patriarchal lenses, can in one moment chant Oriki and sing to Oshun and to Yemaya and to Oba and Yewa with such adoration in their heart and the power of these feminine and female Orishas, and then treat their fellow women in their Ile or in their household like shit and limit them
And,
and clip them at the wings and at the kneecaps and allow them, in essence, allow them to be servers at events and or floor sweepers and moppers and things of that nature, as if they're, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And like I said, we would not have this tradition. I think the same can be said about candomblé. We have to pay homage to the women who have laid down the foundations of what we are practicing
Ashe,
right now.
Ashe, yeah. I mean, again, I echo your sentiments. I've seen it, just as I'm sure that you have. I lived it. We've seen the gradual degradation of the treatment of our fellow, mothers and sisters and wives and daughters, and it's appalling. And I think that, as it relates to Ishesha, I think that there was a great sense of, not only apprehension, but I think a lot of people in the West felt threatened when 10 years ago communication and bridges and links between the diaspora and Nigeria opened up, and all these women went to Nigeria and started being initiated into Ifa, and then they came over as Ifa, and it was palpable, the sense of indignation that a lot of these Awo and Babalao had in the West, and how is it, this is an abomination, Ifa doesn't allow this. And I will say something, so a disclaimer, so a quick disclaimer, because we also have to touch upon some things that are relevant when it comes to that. There are actual regions in Yoruba land where it is taboo for a woman to initiate into Ifa. That does exist. For example, in Ekiti, Oderemo, and some other areas, they don't initiate women to Ifa. However, in most other regions of Nigeria, they do. In Abeokuta, in Oyo, in Ibadan, Ile-Ife, in all, in the vast majority, in Oshobo, and most of these regions, women are allowed to become initiated into Ifa. I think the concept, though, of what being initiated into Ifa is grossly misunderstood by very many people in the West. And that's where the clashes came about. The initiation into Ifa, the initiation of Iten Ifa, as it's known, is nothing more than a rite of passage. And again, there are regions that will say that women are not allowed to initiate into Ifa, homosexuals are not allowed to initiate into Ifa, and they'll back it up by Esifa. How modern is that Esifa? Is it fabricated for political reasons? I mean, there's several questions that have to do with that, but again, without digressing too much into that arena, there are regions that they have their own taboos. I personally believe that what I know and what I've seen and what I've been exposed to, the initiation per se into Ifa, as it relates, let's just stay on the subject of a woman, is nothing more than a rite of passage. And it is my understanding, it is my personal understanding, this is my personal opinion, that every single person who's interested in going through that ceremony should go into that ceremony. The initiation of Ifa is not an absolute segue into becoming a Bawo or a practicing Iyan Ifa. It is solely a rite of passage. According to Yoruba cosmology, it is the initiation or ceremony par excellence that gives you the most insight into your destiny on on earth, the destiny that you chose before you came down from heaven. We're not even going to discuss what the Orishas do in Marin logun, because all that is relevant, and we can go down that tangent, and I'm not knocking on that. I'm just speaking from a point of somebody who is in the tradition itself and has seen firsthand what it is. It's nothing more than a rite of passage. So these women that are going to Nigeria and being initiated into Ifa are empowered by information that is rightly theirs. It's this information that Ifa states that every single human being should be privy of, which is your destiny. Who are we as men to deprive women of that information, which is vital to their happiness, their well-being, their success? So this is where, this is where the misogyny and the patriarchal lens comes in, like you were stating before. It's the control. It's that control, that put down. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that it's across the board. There's very many of us who are very very open and accepting and practical when it comes to that. I mean, it's a question of practicality. It's a rite of passage that should not be denied to anyone, and I really mean no one. If you want to do the Itefa ceremony, you should do it. Every single person that feels a calling to do it should do it. Plain and simple. That's my opinion. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, but that's my that's my opinion. That's what I have learned, and that's what I have seen, and I don't see a singular reason why any human should be not allowed to go through that. Now, they have come in droves to back to the West with the initiation, and they are empowered. Now they're even more empowered, and they want to succeed in an area that is it's of course dominated by men, as it is in Nigeria, rightly so, as it is in Nigeria. But it's not to say that women are not allowed to be practicing in Nigeria. The thing is, and this is what most people fail to understand, is that for whatever reason, be it for patriarchal, cultural underpinnings or what have you, women's roles in Nigeria are, the head of the household. They take care of the children, they clean, they do the cooking, etc., etc., etc. So a lot of them don't have the time to spend training for Ifa, which is something that it's akin to like 2 or 3 PhDs. It's a lot of time that you have to devote to the study of Ifa. But this is the caveat. It is not, and I will say with empirical proof, it is not a new phenomenon. It is just something that it's. And when I say new phenomena, not the Ifa initiation for women in Nigeria, that has been going on for decades, if not longer than decades. It's the phenomena of a woman practicing as an Awefa, somebody who actually does divination and manipulates some Ifa tools. I know there's some caveats because of the whole energy matrix, and there's reason and logic behind that, but we won't get into that. But as practicing Ifa, like a babalao who sees clients and divines and then does it, it's just something that is not very common for the aforementioned reasons. But I have pictures that I hold dear and near to my heart of Ifa practicing in the 1930s, in the 1950s, and that imagine what kind of a rarity it was then. But I think it's changing, albeit slowly at a snail's pace, but it is changing, and I think that people here in the West are finally realizing that they can't stop this train. It left the station a long time ago, and they're gonna get what's rightfully theirs.
Yeah, I think you hit something on the head, and I think it's something that is misplaced, and I think I would say more over here that I've noticed. Eldership, just like other titles, there is, again, a proof in the pudding. So in order for you to claim this Ianifa role, right? Just like you're gonna claim an elder role, it's about competency. It's about knowledge acquisition. Like, what do you acquire? What do you practice? Does Ebo work? Are you chanting what you need to chant? Like, there's so much in the mix. And I think what happens is it becomes a thing, especially for folks over here, is they come back with an idea that they are, and therefore they shall, and they don't understand the rite of passage. They don't understand the steps. And I have to say, to mirror even within Lucumi, once you're initiated to Orisha, that does not make you a fully functional priest. And I think a lot of people have that misconception as well. That gives you a key to access certain information and be in the mix. And even then, there's ebos, right? There's steps. There's a 3-month ebo that gets done before you can do certain things. You get introduced to a room. That's a whole nother deal. You get introduced to a drum. That's a whole nother deal. There's steps. There's a rite of passage that happens before the community. So it's shown to the community, look, these elders have got together and we are showing our Yawo, we are presenting our Yawo with these tools to learn, to function, and it's always steps. And no one comes out of their year in 7 days and like, oh, I'm a this, that, and the other. No, boo. There's no washing hand ceremony that's going to make you an oriate. That's not what it is. You may have some prerequisites, if you want to call it, that may help you along that journey, but it's always going to come down to the proof in the pudding. And can you make the pudding? Do you know what to do with the ingredients? That's what it's coming. This is what we're talking about. So, for a lot of women and people of color over here, they look for the connection to something on a spiritual level, especially something that relates back to ancestry or back to Africa. And then they think that there's this notion that, okay, well, I went over there, I got this thing, therefore I am, and I can start doing this, that, and the other. And it's like, slow down, full stop. And what are you doing to learn? What are you doing with these mentors that you linked up with? What are you doing to divulge yourself in your studies? You may have to travel. You may have to stay abroad for a while and really and the same thing for people that go to Cuba. They do that too. They go to Cuba, they make ocha, they come back here. Now they're looking for somebody to guide them over here. And it's like, you got godparents over there. They're the one who initiated you. So what are you doing to learn? What are you doing to teach? And then you can earn the title, right? And so I think I would have more respect, or I would love to see the open-minded owls here. It's not so much as far as initiating or yet, I should say, initiating women into Lucumi Ifa, but if you come across someone who has the title of such, okay, read. Divine, here you go. Show me. And if they're able to do what they need to do, then that's always going to be the case. Give them the shot. That's how I feel about it. You know what I'm saying? Give them the shot. Can you chant? Can you name this Odu?
I agree with you 100%. And competency and education in that arena is crucial, and it's lacking. I actually, it's the first time that I read a comment, and I want to reply to a comment that my sister Oshun Fumike wrote. She says, "I'm sorry, I disagree. Baba David Sosa, back home folks participate on various level, but the title is dispensed at the discretion of their elders." It's true, and that is true. It is the elders that will actually sanction you publicly to be a practitioner. However, what I have seen in the last couple of years with the advent of Facebook, with the social media and people trying to make a quick buck, I see a lot of young young kids initiating to Ifa, or they haven't even reached, let's say, 10 levels. They haven't even reached level 2, and they are posing as Babalao, and they're trying to get clients, and they're supposed to be doing Eboyan works, and they're actually outsourcing this work to other people, and they come back and they're portraying themselves as licensed, if you want to call it that, or competent Babalao, and that is unfortunate. There is a steady degradation as well in Nigeria when it comes to that, especially amongst the youth. They see, it's unfortunate because it goes two ways. They see a lot of foreigners and they come with money, and you know, we all know how the conditions are there. They're you know they're in need, so they want to make that quick buck, and you know, I don't blame them, but unfortunately it harkens back to one of the previous subjects that we were talking about. People have to do their due diligence, and they have to really seek out references, ask around some more, because there's a lot of fakes and charlatans out there in Nigeria that are posing as babalao, who are, I mean, they don't even know how to feed their Ifa. Some of these people are not even Ifa by profession. They are doing some other profession and
They
initiated.
stay in my inbox. Stay in my inbox. You understand
Especially
me?
those
They
that,
got a whole bunch of shit for me.
especially all those that hate your inbox. Those are the ones you have to run away from. Those and all the Facebook babas and Facebook iyas, like Iyafa Yomifa, they call them the Facebook babas.
Copy and paste old dudes.
Thank you, thank you. You gotta run away from those. But yeah, no, it's unfortunately a big problem that we're faced with on both sides of the pond.
So we have another phenomenon, and I say phenomenon, it's not really a phenomenon, but it's just become the new fad, right? Everything becomes a fad in steps.
Right.
And the new topic of discussion that everybody has is Egbe. And I know we can't go into detail about it because that'll be a whole go live by itself. And the concept of Egbe still kind of confuses me just a little bit. But we have a lot of people that have come. I'm not going to say names yet. But we have people that have come out this way from across the waters that have to scratch your nose at me, sir, that have, stated that Egbe is very comparable to what some of the Lucumi practice as far as Epiritimo. Would you agree with that assessment? If so, yes, and if not, why not?
I want to say that there are, in my opinion, a lot of aspects of Egbe worship found in Espiritismo, especially when it comes to Mesa Blanca and goblets and water gazing and all that fun stuff. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think more so the notion of spirit guides.
Right. So the whole spiritual
comparison
cord thing,
to-
the whole spiritual cord thing. The thing about Egbe is that so it's kind of hard to dissect it. I think there definitely is maybe a semblance of Egbe practice that migrated itself onto Egungun practice. The whole notion of the spiritual cord, Egbe, the word literally means group, and it's like a cord. It's a group of entities. It's actually an ancestral tradition. So there's several ancestral traditions within Iese, not only Egungun, because Egungun is patrilineal and matrilineal. So Egungun is the ancestral traditions that have to do with your actual family bloodlines. But then you have Oro. Oro is also an ancestral tradition, but that's something else. We're not even going to touch on that right now. But you also have Egbe. Egbe is actually considered also an ancestral tradition. And Egbe lurks between the sphere between Orisa and Egungun, and it kind of has a little bit of both, but it's an entity. Egbe are an entity in their own right. I think so. I think my personal beliefs, and there's some people that have challenged that on Facebook lately. But my personal take is that Egbe came. There's several manifestations of Egbe that showed up in the diaspora. In Brazil, it's Ere. They're known as Ere, and Ere is actually another moniker for Egbe. And in Cuba, what little that we know of Egbe, as far as I'm concerned, is Coricoto. Again, there's a new school of thought that is trying to establish that that's an Orisha that 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 had its own personal priesthood. It very well could be, but Korikoto is known throughout most of the regions that I've been to in Nigeria as belonging to the Egbe complex. And as you mentioned before, as you asked before, there certainly seem to be some elements of Egbe worship in. I don't know if to say Espiritismo. I think it's more correct to say
some of the
that insert themselves into what is known as Egungun worship amongst the Lucumi. That's what I would say. Because in my personal opinion, Egungun worship in within the Lucumi tends to be kind of I don't want to use the word hodgepodge, because I don't want to use a term that might seem what's the word as I'm sorry, I'm at a loss of words, as a bad term, a derogative term, but there is a certain mixture of elements. You have the Igi Egun, the Egun stick. That's something that actually there's a history of that stick. It's not necessarily the same one that we use, but there's a history of that stick, and there are old Ifa that actually speak of when you bang down on the stick when you're calling Egungun, water, the water glasses. That could be Egbe. That could also be the importance of the river. The river plays a central role in Egungun worship in Nigeria, so much so that most Igbale or Egungun shrines are usually built either in the proximity or next to a river.
Right. Which is why in Cuba a lot of Egungun sticks were kept in the bathroom when near flowing water. It was always something about having water.
That's something else. Okay. So there's a school of thought. There's a school of thought that says that's because the water goes into the river. There's actually something that I can't really go on, that I can't really talk about. It has to do with the bathroom and worship. The bathroom is actually considered a sacred place for Egungun. There's actually a chant for Egungun that goes, how does it go? Kulu kulu she ojoti baluwe she wo. Kulu kulu she ojoti baluwe she wo. Baluwe means bathroom, and it talks about the rain that falls inside the bathroom. I can't really translate what that means, but the bathroom is a sacred place for Egungun, and maybe we'll touch on that on another subject. But anyway, so yeah, water is something that has to do that has a great deal of connection with Egungun. So I don't know, going back to your question, I don't know, David. There are so many things that the Lucumi really did a fascinating job of trying to preserve things by even putting them in places where they didn't belong. This song is actually has to do with this, or this Orisha is actually related to this Orisha, but we're going to put it here because right now, it seems to me that it might have been, something like, well, we can't deal with it right now, we don't have time or whatever, so I'm going to put it right here and I'll get back to it if I have time, but it's going to stay here, and it stayed there, and it became part of that Orisha's, liturgical process. And right. the Lucumi have to be commended for that. They against unsurmountable odds, they were able to preserve a lot of stuff. And people can say whatever they want to say in regards to this, but they actually preserve a lot of stuff that was lost in Nigeria. There's a big myth that Lucumi, that the Orisha worship in Nigeria waned, and most of it was lost. Now this is an old myth from the 1980s and from way back in the day, and it is a myth. However, it is true that some things have been lost, some things have been absorbed into other cults because the cults just died out. Some towns became completely populated by Muslims, or they became completely populated by Christians, or the cults were not supported, and if you don't support the cults died out. So there's towns where
Yeah.
you just find very few
But, I
Olorisha
mean,
or very few Ifa because of that.
it's not so that's not so different, right? If you think about how much Olokun gets absorbed into Yemaya in our tradition, hand in hand
Right.
with sharing Adimusas and stuff. So again, it's not something that is located to one particular place or anything like that. As far as Egbe and Orisha worship in Yoruba land, as far as you know, do women have head roles as far as functioning master of ceremonies, so to speak? What we would call an Oriate, which we know does not exist, although some people say otherwise. Usually within Yoruba land, the title of Oriate, right? Are there women acting in that capacity though, as far as within certain compounds that you've seen, or even as far as Egbe are concerned? Like, what are the women roles that you see outside of not just Ifa, but as Oloshas and things
So
of that
there's
nature?
somebody there's somebody in Ibadan that claims that the role of Oriate once existed. I don't buy that. And there I
Nobody
have
corroborates it, but
no
that
nobody has
person.
nobody has ever corroborated, and nobody has ever heard of that except this one person that has been exposed to a lot of Lucumi information, and I'll leave it at that. But in regards to women exercising leadership roles within the liturgical process, absolutely, absolutely. Well, women run the show. Women run the show. You cannot initiate and I would vow without a woman. You cannot. There's certain priesthoods where the only ones who initiate people are women, and they're doing everything. They're doing everything. They're doing the shaving. They're doing the washing. They're doing the omiero. They're doing the killing. They're killing all the animals. I mean, they're doing pretty much everything. Now,
Yes. You mean they don't give that over to men? That's not the way? Don't listen to me.
now
I'm
you know,
being extra.
a lot of times, because of the nature of some of these animals. So of course, they employ um, the men
Exactly
to
what I've been saying.
for pigs and goats and cows and whatever and what have you. I mean, a lot of these
Rams and
women,
shit. Yeah.
a lot, a lot,
Young man,
a lot
can you come hold this motherfucker? Like, young man, please come hold this. Thank you.
I mean, a lot of these women are very old. They're in their 70s and 80s, and some in their 90s. So they just can't hold down a goat and sacrifice it. But and again, it's still very much a community religion. So this work is pretty much handed down to either the man or some of the boys are like, hey, you get over here, grab this goat, and but they are the ones who are running the show. They are the ones who are saying, get these plants. I need these animals. This is what we're doing now. I need this. Now we're moving on to this. Let's go to the river. Bring me the clothes. I mean, I've seen them. I've seen them in different capacities and within different uh, initiations, how they operate, and no, the women still run the show. At least when it comes to the vast majority, if not all, of the um, um, initiations into the doshu into Orisha. Most of them. There are some exceptions. Like Ogun and like Shango. But still, the women are there. They have to be there, and they have very specific roles.
I mean, that's luckily I got to witness that with my time in Cuba and see the woman who hosted us. Her name is Xiomara Fauda, Dina, and she just everybody looked up to her and was like, not so much waiting for her to say anything, but they deferred to her a lot, and she had trained some of the young men there who were acting as italeros and training to be oriates. When I did my ita, um, she was present. You know, the one who was there reading me on the mat definitely spoke first, but then they kind of looked at her and she completed, you know, some of the what she knew about the Odu, and then other people present that she had trained as well also spoke. So I have a very long ita, but you know, it was beautiful to see that capacity and to see a woman in that role and see that honoring that was occurring, which is something you don't get to really see too much here in the States. And I know we have a few women who are, I think about three right now in the vast variety of folk who are working in that capacity as an oriate, and we're seeing a lot more people in our tradition open up to at least the conversation of being willing to teach and want to employ, you know, women to learn and to be more active in those roles as it once was. So I'm really happy about that. I can honestly say, as a development, and it's not so much a evolution because it happened before, right? There's spiritual precedent for this. So this is not something that's made up or out of the blue. This is something that should be reinstated. And like I
Yeah,
said, you know, giving
they need a revolution now. They need to come back and
right,
come back
right,
to the
and
rightful place.
it's gonna take for us as male practitioners to really stop and start supporting that narrative and really start supporting our sisters
Absolutely.
and our mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts and whatever the case may be in stepping into those roles, and you know, it's not meant for everybody, so whoever's willing to do the work and put the time and apprenticeship in should be allowed to do it, and more power to you. You know, do you know what you're doing? Again, is there going to be proof in the pudding? So I think
Absolutely.
that that's very important. And there's one last subject I wanted to touch on. I know we've been on here for a little bit. um, Something that's a big, significant, often used as a divisive nature in this tradition, in Lucumi at least, is this notion of Oloshas versus Ifa as this totally separate thing and who does what. And I just wanted to know, in your travels or in your experiences, have you seen, is it more of a clear cut point? Ifa will handle certain parts, Oloshas will handle certain parts of either said ceremony, or you know, do they work together in conjunction with one another? Is that something that is seen?
So in Nigeria, at least the places that I've been to, the roles seem to be a lot more um, cut and dry than here in the diaspora. When you initiate into Ifa and you take it upon yourself to become a practicing Babalao, it is usually the sole priesthood that you dedicate yourself to. Now, having said that, there's a great deal of Babalao that are initiated into other traditions, Egungun, Ogboni, Egbe, um, whatever, and they do participate. So the roles there are, like, you invited me to your room if you ever have and I got Yosha Idosu, and I could function as an Olorisha because I am an Olorisha. So the same thing happens in Nigeria. If there's an Ogboni initiation, it's pretty much a given fact that most of the people that are initiated Ogboni are also initiated into Ifa and are most probably practicing Babalaos. Same thing in Egungun. A vast majority of them are initiated into Ifa as well. And actually, they're all initiated into Ifa because it is through the guys of Ifa that they learn that they have to be initiated into Ogboni and into Egungun and into Egbe. So the Ifa initiation preceded all these initiations, and it was the initiation that told them, you know, this is your destiny, you have to follow this Orisha, you have to worship this Orisha. So they are able to work in that capacity. However, usually they are working in that capacity when they are assisting other members of a particular priesthood. But usually practicing Babalaos will dedicate themselves to Ifa. I don't know if that makes sense. So they're able to work
It makes sense.
in the capacity of priests in other traditions, but it's not something that they do all the time. They're assisting. and they have their hierarchical roles and titles, and they're called on to, you know, exercise those roles, and they do. But usually the Ifa that really wants to be a proficient Babalawo dedicates himself to the study and the manipulation of Ifa technology. So having said that, if we look at the West, we spoke about the needs of the West and how the needs of the West tend to be a little different. So I personally don't see a problem if a Babalawo who is proficiently trained in the rituals of Egbe, if that Babalawo exercises his role as an Elegba in an initiation. But there has to be proficiency. You know, there has to be, you know, you have to have the ritual knowledge and the ritual competency in order to be able to exercise, you know, that particular role in that example as an Elegba or in any priesthood. I don't know if that kind of answers your question. I know it's very different in the diaspora.
I think it paints a good picture.
It's a lot different in the diaspora because
I think it paints a good picture.
Because in the diaspora, the common thread amongst the diasporic traditions is that you pretty much become initiated to just one Orisha. That the initiating into several Orisha is considered a taboo. It's a prohibition, except when it comes to people that initiate into Ifa. And even those that initiate into Oro, what the Cubans call Orum, I would say that initiation is akin, that ceremony is akin to initiation. So that would be a third one. But I don't know if it's kind of difficult to see with that, you know, with that prism because of precisely that we in the West know of. You know, you initiate to your Orisha Alagbatori, and that's it. You work under that capacity, even though you are allowed to initiate people into other Orisha because you receive the other Orisha during your Gariyosha. But I don't know. Right. I don't even know where we're.
But I mean, you know, I think the comparison became when, you know, first of all, let me just say this because I'm also tired of this nonsense as well. I don't understand this whole anti-Babalawo or anti-Ifa sentiment that is rampant. I don't get it. I have yet personally to encounter Awos that I've interacted with on a personal level who have been disrespectful to me at all, be it because of my sexuality or be it because of anything. I've had nothing but respect from traditional to Lucumi. I have no problems. So I don't understand the nonsense, this us versus them that occurs. But one thing that is a relative norm of understanding, a general understanding in Lucumi, is that if somebody was to get initiated as an Olorisha first and then move into Ifa, they would no longer act in the capacity of an Olorisha. They will only be able to function in the capacity
of nonsense.
And
one initiation cannot erase one initiation cannot erase the other.
To me, that always made sense. So I never got it. It doesn't resonate with me. I don't understand it. Because my thing is, okay, so you pass to Ifa. You have a batala done? Do you want to wash your batala? Like, that's how I am. Like, I don't understand. That doesn't erase anything. You could still function. What's the problem?
Right.
So I wasn't sure if that dynamic was existent in Yoruba land or that you've encountered, and that's relatively what I was asking.
So when it comes to that, when it comes to actual initiation, the initiatory process, they will try to bring as many Olorisha that are initiated into the Orisha that somebody's going to be initiated on to work the ceremony. You know, you said an example like what. I don't know. The lines kind of like they kind of blend. I've seen Babalawo do a little bit of everything. You know, I've seen them pretty much do everything. You know, they're there to assist. And if they're called, especially the young ones, they're like, hey, you know what? Come here, feed this Orisha, or go and wash this Orisha here real quick. I mean, they function more as Babalawo, but again, they're there to assist the community. Everybody just it really is a beautiful thing because everybody really gets together and everybody's helping out, and you really see everybody commune with everybody. It really is a community setting where everybody has everybody's back, and there's a lot of laughter, and there's a lot of fun, um, and there's fights and there's arguments. You know, the big mouths. You know, it's just like a Lucumi room. It's pretty much the same. You know, that is.
I mean, that's that's it.
But yeah, I mean, it's you know, they don't have those hang-ups, man. They have a completely different skill set of protocols that are sometimes very different than the ones in the West. And again, it again harkens back to you know, the conditions back then. You know, with the establishment of La Regla Lucumi. You know, they laid down some rules in stone that became kind of, you know, what's the word? They became a little bit too strict when it came to that. When it came to that, and in some ways I understand why. It kind of just
Politics.
it kind of just
So what happening?
it kind of just kept carrying over, and people became a little bit too, you know, too Nazi with the rules. There was no room for you know, compromise or flexibility. Let's just call it flexibility. So, but I think it's changing. I think you're going to see in the next 10 years a lot of different changes. I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable, and I think there's going to be a lot of. I already see it. I think there's going to be a lot of adaptation of certain Orisha from you know, from Nigeria. They're going to be incorporated into you know, the Lucumi pantheon. I see that happening
Oh,
already. Uh,
without a doubt. This last reading from Cuba, it listed Egbe as an
right.
Orisha,
Oh,
in I'm like, oh, since when? Must be
right.
nice.
Yeah, it
Well,
truly
all
is.
right.
Yeah, we're living in very interesting times. So, you know, what I sincerely hope is that we can finally come together and you know, once again become one community, because it's always been a community, but unfortunately there's been so much division and so much divisiveness for a whole bunch of different reasons. I think that most importantly, women have to be given their due, and they have to be returned to the
Ashe,
rightful place
Ashe.
at the helm of everything. You know, we were talking about that the other day, and there's a passage in both El Sameji and Oshotura where it says we must kneel before women because it is a woman who gave birth to a king before the king became an Orisha. So
Ashe.
we need to really practice what we preach, and if we're going to, you know, recite Oshotura before we finish any Ebo, because we need to bring that energy of Oshun, or the energy of Ikun Leabiyamo, which is the energy of motherhood. If we're really, instead of it being lip service, we really have to take a concerted effort in uplifting our women and protecting them, because they are subjected
Ashe.
to a lot of danger. And I don't use that word lightly. Our women are suffering. You know, like I was saying, on the one hand, we speak so highly of them, and on the other hand, we're killing them. You know, we're killing them, we're raping them, we're beating them up. You know,
Silencing them and erasure.
we're silencing, we're ostracizing them, we're shaming them, we're doing all these things that are anathema to what we are supposed to be doing as caretakers of these traditions. And it's high time
Ashe.
that women know and can recognize and can acknowledge those that are here to protect them, to make sure
Just got goosebumps.
that this is going to come to an end, and it's going to an expeditious end. You know, I want, and you know, like we have right now in Nigeria, the issues not Satan movement. I want us to have our own Isheshe Me Too movement, because it's high time. You know, it's about time that all these shenanigans end, and that we definitely give the respect, the honor, and the adulation that women reserve, that women rightfully deserve. You know, so that's my hope. That's what I hope that will happen amongst all the things that are going to happen, and I hope that you know, the Lucumi and people from Nigeria, you know, come together and accept that we both sides have much to learn from each other, much to share, much beauty, you know, and together we can be a force to be reckoned with. Together we can finally bring these religions out of the darkness, and we can become an accepted and acknowledged and recognized world religion, because we have as many practitioners as some of these great religions have, but because we're so stigmatized, there's so much, there's so much, there are so many negative connotations when people hear, you know, Santeria, and, you know, it has to do with the sensationalism and what have you that we have endured for the last 50 years. But I sincerely hope that we can come together, because together we can really form a united front, and pretty much show people, listen, this is what we are. We're just like you. You know, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're policemen, we're normal people, we're rich people, we're poor people. You know, we're women, we're men, we're children. You know, we're women. We're gay, we're straight, we're LGBT. You know, we're humans. We're all the same. We all bleed the same. You know,
Right.
we all so
It's happening.
yeah.
It's happening. There are definitely movements um, that have been happening. I know, particularly in the group that I'm involved in. We had a recent thing in December where we invited, various priests of Orisha from, we tried to incorporate candomblé prayers. We had a voodoo priestess. We had we had some Isheshe folks come and sing songs. And the whole point was, at the end of the day, we all are praising Orisha. Like at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, from whatever region we're at, wherever we're at, on our own separate tradition, we're together in this. And
Bunch of
so
branches from
to
the same
get
tree.
together, what happened?
Bunch of branches from the same tree.
That's it. And I think the more we acknowledge that, and the more we, like, again, we put our actions where our mouth is, where we actually support each other, where we actually provide safe space for each other to, have our grievances, to speak our truths, and then we act as a community to figure out how we need to go about handling that, so to speak. And we can't expect anybody from across seas to do that for us. We have to do what we need to do on our own land,
So
on our own home territory,
on our own
and we have
terms.
to on our own terms. And it's important, disclaimer for folks out there. There's 150,000 YouTubers and Facebook celebrities and people who like to operate under schools and traveling and to this, that, and the other place to teach supposed Orisha lessons and medicines. The reality is, our character plays a big, big part in how our Ashe manifests.
Ashe.
And some people are characterless and they're Ashe-less. And there's some people who know amazing amount of things and can't rub two sticks together to make nothing happen.
Right.
So I always implore folks to get to know the people that you choose as leaders, to get to know the people you choose as your Ile members, and to really, corroborate, talk to other people, network. Do you know this person? Do you know how long they've operated? What's your impression of them? Ask questions.
Absolutely.
If there's nothing to hide, there should be nothing to hide. You shouldn't be
Absolutely.
dissuaded from asking questions about people's credentials and or
Absolutely. And
you know, I,
people have to remember that knowledge does not equate wisdom. You can have a lot.
boom.
You can know a lot. You can chant a lot. You can sing a lot. You can speak a lot.
Okay.
But wisdom is the proper application of that knowledge for the betterment of everybody involved. That's through true wisdom, living what they teach us, truly living it. And I know a lot of people who don't really know a lot. But man, they're so wise. They are so wise. They're wise beyond their years because they get it. They live it. You know, they embody it. So yeah, like you said, ask around. Ask around. Especially also it goes for the other side. You know, this goes for Lucumi and Candomblé. I'm talking for the other side. Ask around. Get credentials. Feel them out. See what you feel. If you get something, run. Run. Because that's your already telling you. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing. Don't fall prey, like we said before, don't fall prey for the fear mongering, don't fall prey for the ego trip, don't fall prey for the control tactic. You are in control of your destiny. You define how that destiny is going to play out. You are the one who walks that path. If somebody is impeding your travel, if somebody is placing a hindrance in your road, keep it moving. Go take another road because it's not in your best interest. And that goes across the board. You are in control of your spiritual development. Make sure that you are always in control. The buck stops with you, not with anybody else, not with your elders or your elders to guide you along the way. And at some point, they have to let you go as well.
Ashe, the bird got to leave the nest and fly.
Chip, chip, chip,
well,
chip.
Chirp, chirp. So we've been on here for about an hour and a half already. I'm super, super happy to have had this experience. I know it's going to be the first of many because I want to pick your brain on a bunch of things. For those of you who do not know, Louis also fixes all these amazing things and restores all these beautiful things and makes traveling issues and I mean amazing work by his hands.
No plugs.
So please
stop it with the plugs.
No, but still, we gotta support one another. And so, like I said, you know, it's about look each other up and find out what folks are about. Pay attention to their words. We're very open books here.
Here, if you're ever in you're in Queens, Brooklyn.
I'm in Queens.
In Queens. So if you're ever in New York and you ever have a chance to check out my brother while he's singing, you need to check out this guy's pipes. You're gonna be amazed. Bring a date. You might be making some babies later on.
Yes, come on now. Idel, oh boo. Now let me stop. All right, my brother. Love to you and love to your family. Love to
very many blessings.
All the folks across the pond. Thank you so much for this. And, oh yeah, this is gonna happen again.
Absolutely.
It's gonna do that. All right, brother man. Have a good night. Good night, everybody. Hope you got some answer to questions.
Thank you for joining us.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care, brother.